Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dirty Martini. I hope you're doing well and I hope you're having an amazing day. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. It is going to be a little bit shorter because even though I have so much to say, I am at a loss of words and I don't know where to start. I don't know how to navigate this. So please be patient. I'm literally shaking. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but I'm just so overwhelmed by what I want to talk about. We all know how much I love coming on here and talking about everything and anything. I love yapping about the most minuscule stuff and just turning an entire episode about, I don't know, like what I ate for dinner. And I always want the podcast to be a distraction, a form of escapism. I want it to be a safe space. I want it to be entertaining. I want it to be a form of us to connect. I want it to be all of that and more, both for you and for me. But I really cannot bring myself to talk about heated rivalry right now, despite really wanting to, and honestly, despite needing to, because for me, this is a cinematic masterpiece. And trust me, I will get to heated rivalry, but I feel like there are more pressing issues that we need to discuss. There are more pressing stories that we need to listen to, we need to see, we need to feel. And it just wouldn't feel right if I came out here and pretended that everything is okay. It would feel deceptive. It feels like I would be lying to you and to myself. And as much as I want this space and this place to be a space where you can find shelter from the trials and tribulations of life and the world, I simply cannot not more extensively address the political and economic state of the world right now. Shout out to Jaden Smith, because yes, in every single episode I say don't support genocide, but I feel like over the last few months, the last few weeks, the last few days, things have been really escalating, and I would love to do one more. Well, hopefully it will be this one and done, but I'm not really hopeful that it's going to be solved that easily and that fast. But I just want to do a quick sit down to make sure that I recognize what's going on in the world. And because the thing is, I feel like it is my responsibility, my human responsibility as someone who I don't have a platform in brackets yet. I am building a platform, but if I am someone who wants to build a presence in the internet, on the internet, I need to be reflective of the context in which my social presence and social media presence is situated. It is my human responsibility, if I have a voice, to talk about these stuff that are going on today and these atrocities, because yes, I could very easily not talk about it and just distract myself, but it wouldn't feel right and it doesn't sit morally okay with me. And I just feel like I wouldn't be doing myself justice, you justice, this podcast justice, if I don't want to say that I'm staying silent, because I try to be as outspoken as often as possible, but I feel like now it would be deceptive if I came here and talked about Hudson Williams, like as much as I would love to, or like Connor's story. And I know that these topics that I'm going to cover are very omnipresent nowadays. You basically cannot turn on the TV without seeing someone be bombed. You cannot open Instagram, or I assume TikTok as well, because I don't know, I don't have TikTok, but you cannot open social media without seeing starvation. Or you cannot open it without seeing attacks on civilians. You cannot open it without seeing murders. It is everywhere. And it's not just on our screens, it's in our neighborhoods, it's in our communities. and it's rooted in our governments. And before I continue any further, I would like to preface, as per usual, I do with episodes which are on similar topics. Dirty Martini is not a place for you to get your facts. This is not an unbiased media channel. Well, we could also have an argument of whether something like objective reporting even exists. I am biased. Dirty Martini is a biased space. It is built by me, for me, and by you accessing this place, I would like you to recognize the fact that this place is biased. I have never claimed to not be, and I will never claim I will not be biased. I am a product of my upbringing, my experiences, the people I meet, the life I live. And these things make me subjective. These socio-cultural, geopolitical, economic, and religious layers which shaped me, shaped the lens through which I view and assess life. They shape my perceptions of right and wrong, of moral and immoral, of correct and incorrect. And so if you are looking for objectivism, turn off this episode. You will not get it here. I will give you my own subjective opinions and interpretations which are based on my lens through which I experience life. And I'm really struggling to navigate today's world. It feels so confusing and I don't know what to do. There are people in many places of the world right now who feel uncertain, who feel scared. I myself am also scared, even though, yes, I live in a country which is on the safer side of the spectrum. But there are people right now who are brutally murdered, who are stripped down from their rights, and every single day it feels so regressive, and I honestly don't know what to do. And my friends keep telling me to be kinder to myself in these situations because I feel like I keep carrying this well, it's not a burden because, well, I again live in these safer conditions, but I carry these people's stories with me. And I feel like I carry some sort of responsibility towards them. And I cannot shut it off. And I do not want to shut it off. And I just really sometimes sit and wonder, how did the term woke become an insult? Why is it perceived as a slur? Why is it used as a slur? Since when is it bad for someone to be awake, to be aware of their place in society, to be alert to society's existence and the systems of which society is built up, or the systems which society built, to be more precise? And why is awareness something we are positioned to be ashamed of? Why is wanting to progress communally crucified? And in moments like these that we have been going through as a society for the past few years, but especially in the last year, I honestly feel so incredibly powerless and discouraged, because as much as I want to help everyone and I want to solve these issues, and I see the issues as issues, and I see what they're rooted in, and I see why they developed, and I see ways in which they can be solved. And I'm not saying that I have the solutions in myself. It's so much more complex than this. It's very much more easier for me to judge, for example, from afar and from a distance and from a safe home with where I have shelter, where I have food, where I have access to clean water. But I know that I simply cannot, like, it's not a one-man job to establish world peace, despite it unfortunately taking just a handful of greedy dictators to disrupt it, apparently. And I know that it is not my job to fix these conflicts, but I also feel like it is my responsibility to not be impartial to them, because silence, in my opinion, means that you're complicit with violence. And I don't mean silence when you're silent because you're listening to someone else's story because you want to learn from that. That is crucial. You don't always need to voice yourself in terms of, like, sometimes it is better to let someone who has experience that speak. It is better to let the more knowledgeable speak, and it's better to stay silent in meaning that it's better to listen and learn. But to me, this impartiality, is that a term, is that a word, I don't know. And yet, like, yes, you could argue that it's so much more easier for me to speak up because I have nothing to lose in terms of fame or celebrity, or that it's easy for me to speak up because I live in a far safer country. I do realize this. I do realize that the consequences to my actions may or may not happen. The consequences to my words may or may not happen. Like, for example, I may be denied a visa to a specific country, or I may be denied a job at a certain company. But then I also think, will I really want to work at a company that supports genocide, for instance? No. So, sure, you can bring up those arguments. I will not deny that it's easier for me to speak up with someone who objectively has less to lose. I will not deny this. But if us, people in safety, didn't address those who are unsafe, who will? Because, for example, the people of Iran, their internet has been shut off, so they don't have access to speak to the world, to bring attention to themselves. And if it's like they're the ones suffering, but they're unable to tell if they're suffering because access to the rest of the world is shut off. So who will speak of them? Who will speak about them? Who will tell their stories? And or are they simply supposed to be murdered silently? Or, like, to be more precise, murdered in agony and in screams, but with the world being deaf to their suffering? And now the thing is, I really don't care what political affiliations you have. I think this is an episode worth listening to because I would like to bring up some points. I would like to have discussions with you, with people who are sharing my political affiliation, with people who are have opposing views. My goal with this is to make you think about certain situations and to prompt you to have discussions with your friends, your families, your partners, your colleagues, your classmates. Have conversations, because if there is nothing else I can do individually to bring around world peace, I can at least talk about what is happening. And yes, it is not your individual responsibility to establish world peace, but you are a part of society, and you can contribute to its downfall or flourishing, even if it's just on a local or immediate circle level. And I know that this is putting a lot of pressure and it may be instilling guilt. This is not the goal of this. It's just to create the perception that we all care. Like, you are your brother's keeper, in a sense. And I know that everything seems so dichotomous right now. And the hope we have, well, the hope I have for a better today, for a brighter tomorrow, it keeps simmering down. And it is very difficult to stay positive in times like these. Fascism is on the rise, radicalism is on the rise, in both ends of this political spectrum. Anti intellectualism is on the rise. There are, for example, I live in the Netherlands. For the past few years, there have been budget cuts for education. In other parts of the world, there are budget cuts for diversity. These budget cuts for education give rise or nurture this anti-intellectualism. And anti-intellectualism is beneficial to governments that are oppressive or that are built on dictatorship, because this is how they stay in power. Because if you don't have the ability to have critical thought, to challenge what you're being provided with, to challenge concepts, ideas, structures, you're just going to be like a herd of sheep that is just going to be navigated by its shepherd. And all of these things, this anti-intellectualism, this fascism, this radicalism, it is rooted in the systems nowadays. And the systems that were built to protect us are the ones that are trying to uproot us and to uproot the diversity which is at the core of our society's existence. And again, for governments that are oppressive, there is no benefit of the people being educated. And banning books is how it starts. Cutting budgets is how it develops. Infringing with the freedom of speech that opposes you is how it develops. But advocating only for the speech that benefits you, that is dictatorship. That is censorship. And you know it's really bad when books like 1984 don't sound dystopian anymore. They just sound like a summary of today's news page. And they are just basically kind of like biographical of our global political state right now. And I know that some of you will perceive me as radical. That is okay. To me, it feels like we're honestly, like I'm really so hopeless. I feel so powerless, and I feel like we're on the brink of social collapse. And if historians live to tell the story, boy, will they have an entire library just covering the past 2 or 3 years. And it feels like to me, it feels like we're progressively regressing. Like the people who are supposed to be in power to protect us, it feels like they only want personal gain and they don't care about the societies that they promise to serve. And this is how mistrust basically develops: mistrust towards the government, towards policies, towards politicians, towards the systems. And it feels like us, common folk, are just, to me, it feels like we're just pawns in a game that we did not agree to participate in. And I know you could now argue, oh, who the fuck gives a shit about you as an individual? Like, do you really think that you, as Martina, are that important that someone is going to use you as a pawn? I mean it on a grander scale. I don't mean it just me as an individual, but I, as an individual, am part of society. And if society is affected, I'm affected. And the same goes for you, whether you realize it or not, whether you deny it or not. And honestly, it just progressively starts feeling like we are just tools. We are means to an end, but not an end in itself. And I don't know how hopeful I am. I used to be very positive about the situation. I used to always be like, oh, the youth, we are going to bring around change with ourselves. And I do believe that. I do believe that our generation and the generations after us, we have a lot of ambition and means to bring around change for a better future for us, for the people who are about to come after us. But I just feel every single day, because of the news I consume, and yes, you could argue that this is just representation heuristic, and it's basically I'm just fed this negativity, and that's why I perceive the world from such a negative angle. And if I would consume more positive content, I would perceive it more positively. Yes, you could make that argument, but I know that I sound super pessimistic. But I genuinely don't know if I'm able to put a positive spin on this on a grander scale. But the positive one to me is the negative one to me is very obvious. And of course, I'm not saying that there is nothing good left in life. Of course, I'm not saying that everything that happens in life is negative and that all hope is lost and that this is irreversible. But at times it genuinely feels like it is, and at times it genuinely feels like there is no escape from this hellhole, and it feels like all joy and happiness have died. And no, I just feel like it's because of this ever presence of violence. This also because they get obviously more covered in the media, they feel ever present. The violence feels ever present, anger, sadness, hopelessness. And we, on the one hand, appreciate communal joy more because of these stuff. But at the same time, I feel like we also communally distrust joy. We have been kind of burned so many times that we are so precautious and we're like, oh, it's too good to be true. We distrust safety, we distrust positivity because we have been taught that they are temporal because of the cyclical nature of violence. And we have come to perceive positivity and safety as fleeting because they've become something so extraordinary. And the what do you mean that there is, for example, unity when all we've been witnessing is divide? And when the poorer are becoming poorer and the richer are becoming richer and they're reaching a state of wealth, which to me personally is incomprehensible, and this divide just becomes larger and larger, and closing that gap comes to see even more and more impossible, and all of our opportunities seem more and more limited because of one reason or another. And what I think is even scarier is that this divide brought or brings with itself the death of empathy. These behaviors, these systems, these structures, and these events, these outbreaks of war are so normalized in a way. Like when you scroll through them and they're sandwiched between recipes of like low fat yogurt, blah, 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 and then holes of what I got for Christmas and whatever, you become desensitized to those horrors because to you they just become something to scroll past or something you just witness on your phone, but nothing you see on your phone is really real. So why would that thing be real? And this is how these propaganda benefits from all of this, because through this oh my god, oh my god, what the fuck, desensitization, I believe, is how we lose our empathy, because we just become so numb to all of this because it becomes so normalized, it becomes so everyday, and it doesn't seem like something extraordinary. It doesn't, yes, it is in the news, it is newsworthy, but it's nothing new, right? And what is even more crazy is that because of all of this, not only is it the death of empathy ever more progressively, it is also the death of critical thought. We are just fed content, and there is so much misinformation, there is so much disinformation, and you just see, the thing is, social media is simultaneously the best and worst thing to happen to journalism, because journalism is meant to inform, and it is meant to inform the people about the people. And now you have immediacy, which is crucial nowadays for journalism, because back in the day, you would report something in the newspaper only like this, the closest they, oh my god, I cannot speak today, guys. I really like, I'm shaking throughout this whole thing because I'm just like, so I have so much pent up emotion. But basically back in the day with the newspaper, like the fastest you would be able to report is the day after, because you need to write a thing, you need to produce the newspaper, and you need to sell them. But nowadays you have immediacy. You can report something live, and you don't need to be an established journalist to report something. And that is great, because now you have immediacy and you have people's real stories told by themselves the way they want them to be told, rather than them being taken and spun through a specific lens that is going to benefit the agenda of the news, for example, well, which is to generate clicks or whatever. Well, I mean, of course, I'm not saying that all media is bad. Media is crucial. Trustworthy resources are crucial. I'm not saying that the media is bad. Journalism, although some might argue that it's dead, I don't think real journalism is dead. It's just transforming itself. But now, because of social media, you have all of these pros, but you also have the disadvantage of everybody can create a story. Because now I can come out here and fabricate something and present it as true, and who's going to argue with me that it's not true? Or like, especially with AI, what are credible sources nowadays? Especially with AI, because back in the day, back before AI was so prevalent and so developed, video footage or photographic material of something was basically taken as a token of authenticity of the news that you're trying to report on. But now, because AI is so accessible to us common folk, everybody can generate anything. We can generate clips, we can generate photographic material, we can generate voices, we can fabricate stories. So now there is this distrust towards journalism, because now what you see as video material is no longer taken as a token for authenticity or for something that actually happened. Because I myself can go and fabricate something like a complete video reportage, and that's going to be not true. And this is just how all of this systems, they crumble from within. And basically this is how we no longer can rely on the things that were supposed to support us. And what is driving me crazy, apart from the implementation of AI, which I've talked about many times, what is driving me crazy is because the media is a very powerful tool. If you don't trust me, I can show you my degree, which proves that I've studied this, and I know that the media is powerful. The media is an extremely influential tool in our society, and the media knows what it's doing. And the dehumanization of victims that is happening in the media, that is created by the media, is making my blood boil. For example, I hate it when they say Palestinians are dying. No, Palestinians are being murdered. Palestinians are being brutally killed. Always, please, I am begging you, in the rise of lack of critical thought, I am begging you, mind the language that is used in the reporting of a case, in the reporting of an event. Every single word that is used deliberately, because it brings around different connotations with itself. Note, for example, when they're reporting on a genocide, are they using names? Are people just summarized like as a number, as a statistics, or do you see actual names and actual faces? And the thing is, I know that the media is supposed to be unbiased, but the media is established by people, for the people, it is run by people, and people are by nature not unbiased. But like I told you, I myself am a product of my environment and my life experiences. And the same goes for you. And if you come out here and you claim to be objective when you talk about a certain thing, I'm going to call bullshit, because you're not objective. But I feel like the, obviously, it cannot be eradicated, and it should not be eradicated. but it is taken out of proportion right now to the extreme. Like, for example, media's biases are taken to the extreme right now, and what is also facilitated by are filter bubbles and echo chambers, which nurture this radicalization. So, for example, and the same goes for me. I'm going to use the you pronoun, but it also applies to me. You are surrounded on social media because of your algorithm, because they want you to keep spending time on it, and you're going to keep spending time on social media. And the reason they want you to spend time on it is so that they can collect your data to sell it to third parties so that they can make money. And the more time you spend on there, the more traces you leave, the more data they can collect, and the more money they can make off of your attention, off of your time, off of you. And basically, the way they get you hooked, the way they get you to spend more time on there is through algorithms. And those algorithms, while a lot of people, well, I think nobody knows how algorithms actually work because they're so complex. They're basically like the black box of social media. But those algorithms know that if you are fed something that confirms your beliefs and you're agreed with by the content they present you with, you're going to like that content, save that content, share that content, and you're going to spend more time on that social media because you feel like you're not in danger, you don't feel opposed to. And for example, those are so dangerous because, for example, during the last presidential elections of the US, my For You page had convinced me that Kamala was going to win. And I was like, there is no way the outcome is going to be any different. And then when the results obviously came round, I realized that, wait, shit, no, that's just my social media algorithm convincing me that this is going to happen, feeding me that type of content because this is the type of content I appreciate, this is the type of content I engage with, and obviously it's going to generate more of that content to be brought to me by other users or whatever. So I basically, during the presidential elections, let's say, I was shown only content that was liberal, that was pro-liberal, that was anti-conservative. So, for example, if I am surrounded only by like-minded individuals, we are going to feed each other's notions. We are all seeking that confirmation bias, where we all have that confirmation bias. And because I believe that everyone around me shares those views with the way I do, and I face no opposition, I become more and more radicalized. Because basically, through those echo chambers, your ideologies are political, let's say political ideologies or religious ideologies, are decontextualized, and from that decontext, why am I using such complex words today and making my life harder than it should be? But basically, by them being decontextualized from a context in which they face opposition, a context in which your truth is not the universal truth. So when you take them away from that context and you further develop them basically in a vacuum. And hence, you get shocked by any criticism and you become opposed to any criticism because your truth is presented to you as the communal truth, the universal truth. And I just really wonder why we just don't learn from history. Because what is it that they say, that those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it? Yeah, they really meant that. Because why are we so brainwashed that we fail to see the propaganda, for instance, that is happening on the White House's Instagram? Why do we condemn one genocide, historical genocide? We then learn from it, say never again, but then when currently multiple genocides are happening, we just scroll past. Or we are like, yeah, man, that's bad, and that's it. And honestly, what a terrible time to be someone with empathy, with critical thought, and any humanity in them. Because this is haunting my dreams. This is occupying every single moment of my life. It is defining the decisions I make. It is defining the people I surround myself with. And it's a lot. And I'm not trying to make it about me. No, I just feel like by me telling this story, by me sharing my experience with navigating this chaos, I hope to make you feel better and less lonely if you yourself are also struggling to navigate this chaos. And it is a chaos. People are stripped down from their homes. Innocent civilians are killed on the street. And we, instead of being appalled, we justify it or we simply scroll past it. And I get it. Our brains are simply not wired to navigate horror at that scale or life at that scale. I don't want you to feel embarrassed if you're overwhelmed or if you're struggling to navigate this, or if you're struggling to navigate this abnormal situation. Just know that you're not supposed to know how to navigate this, because in my humble opinion, these things are not supposed to happen. These things are like, they should not even be a concept that occurs in a human's mind. And what makes my blood boil is the hypocrisy. For example, the same people who uproared when Charlie Kirk was killed are the same people who justify Renee Goods' murder. But for Kirk, it was when he was murdered, the narrative they were propagating was all about, did he deserve this? He was a father. He had a family. Didn't she? Wasn't she a mother? Didn't she have a wife? Didn't she have friends, family, people who cared about her, people she cared about? Why is one murder justified and the other is condemned? And the manipulation of narratives for personal gain is driving me insane. And for example, what I said earlier, pay attention to the language that is used in the media. You cannot call someone a domestic terrorist without any facts to back up your claim. And you cannot praise someone as this God-sent gospel spreader who was killed because he was fighting for the justice of freedom of speech, but the other one is a domestic terrorist. How does that make sense? This manipulation of narratives is just outrageous. And these twists and turns of the truth are so carefully curated to divide us even more, because that is their end goal. And in this divide, we forget that, like I mentioned, we are just pawns manipulated to serve someone else's agenda. And you know what? Sometimes I just sit and wonder, after, scrolling on my phone and literally seeing a man carry his decapitated child, or seeing land soaked in blood, visibly from space, you can see the blood, or someone be blinded for protesting, someone be shot after saying, I'm not mad at you, and their corpse driving away and the car just smashing into a trash can, someone looking for their child after a building collapsed on top of them. And mind you, I am lucky that those things I only see through a screen. And if you are also the type of person who's privileged enough to see them only through a screen, not when you step outside of your home, please recognize this blessing. And yes, you could, like, I've seen people argue of, why do you care that much? You don't live in those places. If they ban abortion in America, your immediate life is not going to be affected by this because you live in a country where reproductive health is still legal. Keyword still. Now, to the disengaged, to the people who say that they don't do politics, to the people who are like, no, I don't have an opinion, the left is bad, the right is bad, that's why I'm going to stay impartial. Why, if you don't do politics, why do you complain about rising prices? Why do you complain about your boss being why do you complain about struggling to find a job? Why do you complain about your landlord and your ever increasing rent? Why do you complain about your inability to access proper healthcare? Or like healthcare just being so incredibly expensive? Or anything else? I thought you didn't do politics, so why are you like, politics affects us all. Politics was built by the people, for the people. It affects you, whether you realize it or not, and whether you choose to address it or not. And I personally believe that you being able to shut it all off because it does not concern you is a privilege. It is a privilege that your means, for instance, like financial means, are unaffected. But you having those means is the result of some policies. You say you don't do politics, but then you have education, you have a job, you have a home, you have a family. You don't do politics. And the thing is, if you don't do politics, politics is going to do you. And I just wanted to say that I know that politics can be overwhelming. I myself am not an expert. I myself am still learning. And I know that ignorance sometimes is the easier path over educating yourself. I don't want you to feel ashamed if you don't know about politics. There are a lot of these issues nowadays that are developing. I did not know about. I did not know about Palestine and Israel's relationship before 2023. I was not educated, and I felt very embarrassed, and at first I avoided what was going on because I felt like I just didn't have access to what was going on simply because I didn't have education. It is my own responsibility to educate myself. And I could come around here and be like, oh, it's so shameful that you don't know. How are you so not unaware? Like, how are you so unaware? It's okay for you to not know stuff, but I feel like nowadays we have ubiquitous access to information. And if you really wanted to learn something, you could. Because could I have stayed ignorant to the attacks on Palestinians or the attacks on Ukrainians or the attacks on people in Congo? I could have. But it's there is no shame in not knowing, but there is shame, in my opinion, in willful ignorance. And I feel like once we realize that your neighbor's problem or a stranger's problem is your problem too, only then will we be able to progress. And I really wish people who are so, for example, opposed to immigrants realize that they have so much more in common with the illegal immigrant who crossed borders to make a better life for themselves and their family than they do with the billionaires whose ideology they propagate. I just want you to sit with that if you're like opposed to immigration or whatever. And if you bring up the argument of immigrants are stealing our jobs, they're doing this, they're doing that, are you sure you're qualified for that job in the first place? Because, yeah. So what I wanted to say is that sometimes I just really in situations like these, after scrolling and seeing so much horror and murder and just terror and fear, I just sit and wonder, why is it that I get to live the life I live, but for example, a girl my age, born somewhere else with skin darker than mine, or with less means than I, or born in a country with a regime more oppressive or openly oppressive than the one I was born in, why do I get to live and have access to shelter, food, education, career, opportunities, but she doesn't? How is she different than me? I didn't choose to be born into the family I was born into. I didn't choose to be born in the country I was born in. I didn't choose to be born with the skin I was born with, and neither did she. Why do I, for example, as a white person, get preferential treatment over someone who has darker complexion? And the thing is, I am sure there are millions of girls out there my age with better ideas, more creativity, more compassion, more ambition, more stamina, more like a better mindset. And they don't get to develop them because they don't have access to securing the satisfaction of their basic needs. They don't have access to education. They are forced to wonder if they will live to see tomorrow. They are forced to wonder if they will have food on the table, access to clean water, or if they will be brutally murdered, raped, or both, simply because they were born the way they were, in a country where they were born, with a complexion that they were born in, let's say, a religion that they were born. And that to me, it paralyzes me, that thought, because it's all pure luck. I didn't choose to be born white and have access to the privileges that white people do. And she didn't choose, for example, to be born without those privileges. And sure, I can turn off the phone and stop my access to the news, but it doesn't stop the horror. And I feel like considering that I cannot do anything to protect those people, I owe it to them to learn their stories and tell the stories, to not let their suffering go unnoticed. I just, and I really, I just wonder, for the people who voted for those regimes or the people who support those regimes, are you happy? Are your groceries cheaper because someone was murdered? Is your gas cheaper because someone who was born in that country to illegal immigrants had their family deported? Is your quality of life better? Is someone else's pain your happiness, your pleasure, your gain? And if you said yes, I just really don't think you realize that you may think that just because you support these regimes, you will not be treated with kindness. You will not be spread the gruesome slap of oppression. But I just really think that you don't realize that you will in no way receive preferential treatment over those who oppose, over those who suffer. And the thing is, I'm no specialist. And what's further the thing, I'm not trying to nurture division. And also, the thing is, I can very much respect the fact that different beliefs exist, different religions, different situations. I respect that. I respect the fact that there is different approaches to life, to governance, and whatever. I can respect someone who has more traditional views, but I cannot respect someone who supports these modern oppressive regimes of dictatorship. People's right to live should never and must never be a point of debate. I can respect you if you like pineapple on pizza, but I cannot respect you if you think that your religion is the one and only true religion, and the only acceptable one, and that you feel entitled that you should impose it on other people. I cannot respect you if you try to rationalize oppression, if you try to justify genocide. I here am arguing about something that is moral. You're arguing about human rights and people's right to existence. And the problem is, it is perceived not just by me, but it is generally nurtured as a us versus them issue, when it is a communal issue. Not only because, like I mentioned, you have more in common with the illegal immigrant than you do with Elon Musk. It is a communal issue because we're all part of a society, of a global society, and a girl's rights taken away from her in America, her right to reproductive care being taken away, affects me, even though my reproductive rights are currently not under threat. Because a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And a society is as free as its most oppressed folk. I really don't know what to tell you, man. Like, I'm struggling. I'm really struggling to navigate this. I know I didn't say anything revolutionary out here. I didn't create compassion. I didn't create empathy. I didn't create humanity. But I feel like it's my responsibility to keep them alive, at least within me. No matter how much pain sometimes it may bring me, I feel like it's my duty to be human in very inhumane times. And again, it's not all bad. There may be progress, there may be hope. And I'm really hoping this all comes to an end sooner rather than later, because if it is later, I don't know if there's going to be anything to build on. Yeah, I know it sounds very nihilistic. I know it sounds very pessimistic, but this is the only thing that's been occupying my brain for such a long time, and I don't know how to navigate it. I would love for you to share your opinions, share your viewpoints, share your frustrations, share your criticism towards my views. That's fine. I feel like we need to realize that it's not you versus me, it's an us situation. And I think that by realizing this, we're already doing a massive leap towards a brighter future. And I know that all of this sounds like very posh sayings and just empty words said by politicians in their election campaigns. I know this, and I know that I myself don't have any power to change anything. And I know that by me saying those stuff, the people who were brutally murdered over the past years are not going to come back to life. I know that me saying those stuff, it's not going to change the situation. But if I stay silent, that means I'm complicit. And I am anything but impartial. And with that, I want to thank you all so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was thought-provoking. I hope it didn't basically eradicate your willingness to live. But I feel like we need to be reflective of the situation in which we are. Whether that is our immediate situation, like our immediate outside the house, or the situation of the people we don't even know and we may never meet. Because we're all connected, and we owe it to ourselves to be responsible and to be human. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, stay hydrated, wear sunscreen, and don't support genocide. Bye.